Business continuity planning. So, BCP is an activity that every organization follows in order to keep their businesses up and running. This is one of the critical uh, operations or a task that needs to carried out in order to not face any losses. So, uh, if from the exam point of CISSP, the official study guide which I have been referring to, in that the BCP process has 7 stages. So I'll talk about each stages and then we will drill down on what happens on in each stages. So the stage one is the uh, contingency planning stage. This is the stage where you define the scope, where your regulatory requirement comes in, and this is the stage where uh, the documentation part, the BCP team setup is done. So business continuity is not only the responsibility of IT or an information security team, but it is the role of every individual organization and uh, the CFT, the cross-functional team, should be part of the BCP from very beginning. And BCP should not be driven without the leadership or CEO in it. Yeah, the training and the implementation does not require the leadership, but yeah, initial stage of planning does require involvement of the leadership. The second phase of BCP is business impact assessment. In business impact assessment, the there is two things to this. One is that when we do risk assessment, at that point in time, also we go through a process of business impact assessment. So the similar way the BIA is carried out in BCP, you can just reach out to your risk assessment team and get the impact assessment. So BIA is wherein you identify the priorities, the critical asset, the RTO, the maximum tolerable downtime of your application or of your system. So this is where you decide on whether or not to accept the risk or to mitigate the risk. So it is the similar way it is done in the risk management life cycle. You do the business impact analysis. So once you have the data in hand of after the business impact assessment, now we go on to the next phase, which is deciding on the control. So uh, it could be a scenario that there are four risk responses. So similar way in BCP also, we go with the four responses. Either we accept it, transfer it, mitigate it, or avoid it. So in this phase, since it's at BCP and we have to have our operations continued, we go with the mitigation phase, where all the critical we because in BCP we only talk about the critical operations. We do not create a backup for less critical or non critical systems. So we decide on how to create a contingency plan or what resources are required in order to have our operations continue. So this is where we decide on and we move on to our next phase, which is after decision, the implementation or development of the business continuity plan. So in the development of business continuity plan during the development, the RTO. So there is one more thing that we need to understand while while the development of the uh, business continuity plan control is that we might require a facility or additional resources. So the cost of that should not exceed with our uh, the cost of the safeguard should not exceed the cost of the asset. So this is a decision that has to be made and carried on. Then once the implementation is in place, the last two phase, which is exercise and test, is carried out, and there are methods with which the exercise is carried out, and lastly the maintenance and operation where the BAU is performed. So now we'll go one step deeper to this plan. This was an overall high level overview of BCP. So from the exam point, there is one thing in the business impact assessment that you need to keep in mind is that when the assessment is done, there are two or four terms rather that one should keep in mind. One is to ask your business the RPO, recovery point objective. Second is you need to understand is the maximum tolerable downtime. And third is to understand the recovery time objective. And fourth is to identify the work recovery time. Now let's take an example for these terms. So let's consider it as a timeline. Um, let's say you have an application, any shopping site. Now, the let us consider that we have a, a, DR site for this ready. The Let us consider that the site goes down. So if you take it as a timeline, the RPO come first. When the site goes down or when the disaster has occurred, that's the recovery point objective. So from that point onwards, my backup will come into action. So now my site has gone down, it is down for whatever, then the backup comes into action. Now, after a point, then my recovery has to start. Once my backup is in place, my recovery should start. This is where the recovery time objective comes in play. Till the time my recovery, let's say in this case, my recovery takes 12 minutes. So the recovery time objective is 12 in this case. After the recovery time, after I have recovered the backup, now comes my work recovery time, which is WRT. This is the time where you restore the operations. So now we have taken the recovery. Now your time is to bring the operation into its normal stage. So the RTO and WRT, work recovery time, this sums up to maximum tolerable downtime. So whenever we conduct a BCP exercise, the business will only tell you that okay, if I keep my site down for 10 minutes, I might lose a business of 10 crore. So in that case, you have to have a very strong DR wherein my work, the recovery time objective and my work recovery time has to get up and running within like 5 minutes. I don't have much time to lose because I might lose a business of 10 crore or something. So that is why when we do the business impact assessment, you need to ask your team or the business team. This IT cannot tell that the business will go out if my application goes down for 10 minutes, I might lose it. You need business team to give you give you these insights on what we can lose. So that way, let's say if I lose 10 crore, then it makes sense to have a DR of around, let's say, 1 crore or 2 crore. It makes sense. But let's say if I'm not losing much in that application, then having a DR, an expensive DR, it doesn't make any sense. So this was the way the business impact assessment should be carried out. So once this is done, once you have your RTO, RPO, your WRT, your MTD in place, now you have a clear mindset that how you want to run your business continuity plan. The fourth phase, which is the uh, development phase. In this phase, uh, the organization has to come up with the decision whether what facility to use. If I have a critical site, let's say a disaster, an earthquake comes up, and I want to move my team from the primary site to secondary site. So there are four types of sites which is discussed in CISSP. One is hot site, warm site, cold site, and hot site. One second. Um, I can't remember. There is one more. Uh, just a sec. Mm, just a minute. This is very important to know. That is why I don't want to skip on the type of sites. Um, what is the fourth one? Mm, okay, there is um hot site, cold site. Okay, mobile site. Sorry. Sorry for the time. Okay. So one, the hot site is like the name. If you go by the nomenclature, this is the site which is running in active mode. Your computer, your servers, your workstations, your network, it is exactly built as your primary site, and it runs in the active mode, and it runs 24 by 7. So if your business operation is very critical, in this case you can go with hot site, but it is very expensive to maintain. So because the data is mirrored in hot site. So if you're going with this approach, you have to make sure that the application which goes with the hot site, or the business process which goes with the hot site the loss is as expensive as the back BCP setup. So this is how the hot site works. Second is the uh, warm site. Warm site is where you have your systems readily available, but the applications may not be installed. So it is not as expensive as hot site, but the availability will take, in order to bring up your systems or recover or restore your systems to the warm site, it will take a longer time as compared to the hot site. But if you don't have very much critical systems running, you can go ahead with the warm site. Cold site is a facility with critical infrastructure service. It does not include any IT equipment or resources. It's one of the lowest cost among all the sites, and it may not come. Obviously, the setup, the everything will take, even the time might take more than a day or two, and well, it's like you have a site ready, but there are no equipments or nothing installed. So that is why it is called a cold site. And lastly, there is mobile site. Mobile site, like it says, it is mobile, and uh, the organization have full control over all the equipments in the mobile site, and it is self-contained, it is transportable, sheltered, it is transportable, and it can be like, you can consider it as the picture that comes in my mind. You have an open space, and a mobile site is where it's movable, and usually it is used in a place where, less earthquake prone areas, and in this, the resources may not be immediately available, but yes, it requires advanced level of configuration. So we have spoken about sites, we have spoken about the business impact and assessment. Now, the second last phase, which is um, the exercise or the drill. So there are types of drill. So in CISSP, the domain one talks about BCP, its importance, its phases, and domain seven talks about the sites and the business impact assessment. But I am covering as a whole what BCP uh, is, and the steps of the BCP. So the I was talking about the one second, the test and the exercise. So there are four types of exercises that can be carried out in order to test your BCP plan. And before starting with the BCP, there is one more thing that you need to take care of is the difference between BCP and DR. So, though the term says BCP DR, DR is not what BCP is, but BCP is what is DR. So, DR is a subset of BCP. So, business continuity plan. Here, your agenda is to make sure that my business goes uninterrupted in the case of disaster. And disaster recovery is purely the IT systems. So it does not. talk about, yeah, it talks about BCP. The BCP is where you have to have a mindset of, to bring back my operations and everything. And DR is where the IT team, the IT systems, the backup, the raids, and everything comes into play. So have a clear understanding of BCP and DR. Now, coming back to the testing types. So there are four types of test, DR BCP testing. One is tabletop exercise. So the tabletop exercise, you can vision it as a simple scenario based exercise where the team member talks about various scenarios, and they discuss on what action should be taken in case of those scenarios. It is just a simple exercise with the documentations and discussion. The second type of exercise is walkthrough test. So this is where you take a physical rehearsal of recovery procedures. Again, here also the documentation is involved, but there is no interruption in the business. So tabletop and walkthrough is a very simple exercise. It requires only the team members, and you can talk out about the scenario. In walkthrough, you are going one step ahead and talking about the recovery procedures. This third test is the simulation test. So, in this uh, simulation test, you are actually mirroring the disaster condition as close as you can, and we are conducting the exercise to see how my BCP plan will come into action. And lastly, the full interruption test. This is where you shut down your live site and see how my recovery site comes into play. So, depending on the budget, the team's availability, we can perform or we can use any one of from the four exercises. So this is about the BCP. I think I have covered all the points in terms of examination. One of the important thing also to understand is that there are many regulatory that mandates the organization to have contingency plan. Yes, along with the, it is very important or significant for an organization to have a BCP plan, but few regulatories like SOX, HIPAA, GLBA, FISMA, they require the organization to have the BCP plan in place, and it's one of the audit requirement. They might ask how the full interruption test was conducted. They might ask for the evidence. So as it's not just a business requirement or a best practice, but it is also a mandate and a regulatory requirement. Thank you.